what's your title at Woods?
Content marketing specialist.
Okay, so you're content marketing special at Woods, and you are also a creative writer.
Yeah,
And then you have a background in journalism.
I do.
Yeah. So I do want to get to some of the background, but I did have a question on
Stunts as well? I've heard stunts.
stunts.
Some.
Yeah.
Some.
Stunts.
Yeah.
She does a lot
Moonlighting.
of stunts.
I like it. No, but we were talking about Woods and just how you didn't know anything about the
Nothing.
attachments and kind of, the mechanical side of the things you're marketing.
Yeah. Yes.
So how do you approach going into a business like that? And then you have to immerse yourself because you have to understand the product you're selling.
I mean, you do, but I also think, good marketing doesn't change by industry. Like, obviously there's nuance to every industry, but how you approach telling the story of your brand, how you approach your audience, the types of tactics that you use to support your marketing strategy, all that effectively, in my opinion, translates industry to industry. Sure, there's like nuance in there, I'm sure. But certainly when I started, I knew the most I knew about tractors and farming and agriculture at all was from just reporting in Iowa. And obviously agriculture is a massive part of the state and a massive importance to the audience that we served when I was a reporter in Cedar Rapids. So I knew a little bit, but when I interviewed for the job, to your point, I said to, I think I interviewed with like 5 or 6 people, and I was like, I just kind of want to start this with like, I know nothing about ag. It's like, if that's going to be an issue, like, let me know. And I totally understand. And everyone was like, it's not, yes, we want you to connect with and understand our audience and understand what's important to them. But there are people who work at Woods who've had a variety of different, worked in a variety of different industries before coming to Woods and didn't have any experience in ag either. But they're passionate about the customers we serve. They're very good at what they do. They have the right skill set for the position the role that they're in. And we have, I really think, a wonderful team there. But yeah, it's intimidating at first because you think, oh gosh, I know nothing about this industry. I really know nothing about these products. I've never driven a tractor. I've never.
Have you now?
No.
No?
You should add that, Cheryl.
It's
if you're listening.
Cheryl, please. It's actually on my list. And every time I go out to Oregon, which is usually for a photo shoot or video shoot, and spend the day there, everyone's always like, have you been on a tractor yet? And I'm like, no. And it's partially because we just run out of time, and it's like, I'm not there to like drive the tractor.
I would say just ask them if you can clear some woods, with the brush cutter.
I saw Colin's here today, right? Or he was like in and around. Okay, so Colin knows what I'm talking about here. Shout out to Colin. He was on one of our shoots for our BW15, our old model, which is like this 15-foot mower brush cutter that has blades in each section of the 3 parts. We call it a bat wing, because it literally looks like a bat wing. And these things are incredible. Like, they will run over a huge tree that's like 4 inches, 5 inches in diameter.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow.
It's so, and Colin was there he did the drone footage for that shoot. But it's like unbelievable when you see the product actually in action. There's like a part of you that's like, yeah,
destroy it.
Yeah, which I mean is like, it's just it's very cool to see the product do what it does, but it's a big undertaking, any of these photo or video shoots that we do, because the product is very large. It's difficult to transport. You have the tractor, then you have to get the crew set up, you have to get in location. So pretty much,
that's a lot to coordinate.
It's a lot to coordinate. And so I usually try not to complain about the fact that I've almost been there 2 years and I still haven't driven a tractor.
I would still complain.
It's at the top of my list, but I'm trying to be respectful of the fact that
it's incredible, these machines that people build. Have you ever seen those? I can't remember. I did a video for a company that cleared like land lumber.
Yeah.
So huge trees. And those machines that wrap around the tree, cut it, and then it goes through.
It's amazing.
It takes all the branches off. It's so incredible watching those things at work.
I know.
I was just thinking of, you brought that up, like seeing that actually get cut. I was watching these giant logs just be completely taken down by just an arm, you know, that people created. It's
so
crazy.
Cool. You have such respect for the engineering that goes
I know.
into it. It is, and I coming from a journalism background, I think if you go into journalism, you're naturally curious. And like I said, I would eventually turn this on you guys and be asking you questions. But you're a naturally curious person. And so to what you said earlier, Victor, about like going in and not really knowing the products and everything, like I enjoy learning. I've always enjoyed learning. I've always been a curious person. And I think that curiosity helps me in my job to create good content because I do want to know. I want to know how it works. I want to know why it's better than, you know, this other brand, why we do it this way versus that way, why we set up our manufacturing facility the way that we do. And all of that, like curiosity, I think has really served me well. And going into a position where I was like, I really don't know anything, but I do really like to learn. And I really am passionate about that. And so it didn't take long. Plus we have a fantastic product team that our brand marketing director, Kristen Fritz, who I work with every day, has far more experience in marketing than I do, but she has told me on several occasions, like, we have a very uniquely strong product team here, and you don't always get that everywhere you go, and that really helps her and I in the work that we do every day, understanding the products and what do we need to be sharing with the customers about the product.
Where do you think you get that curiosity? Because I've been thinking about this. The people that are not even the most successful, but just like there's either people who are just kind of born curious, I feel, and like there's people who just find a thing they like and then they become extremely curious about that. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, I can say, like, for me, I've just kind of always been that way. I don't know if there's like, I used, when I was a kid, my parents and like, I remember my parents and my grandma used to be like, I was always kind of like off to the side, like, you know, just kind of like quietly watching that, like observing before I would jump in. And I think like I was always just kind of like assessing the situation and like curious about what's going on and who's doing what. And that just kind of like evolved as I grew up into like, I want to know how that works, or I want to know, why is it done that way? Why don't you do it this way? And just, again, I think it's just like an innate like love of learning. I've honestly at one point had considered going down a track while I was getting my journalism degree to try to also get a degree in education. And I kind of got like sidelined on that for I think some administrative reasons at the college. That was like for whatever reason, they didn't want like me going into journalism and double majoring in education, which is what I was trying to do at the time. I have no idea why, but I just really enjoyed learning and I love sharing that with other people. And I think that naturally kind of pushed me in the direction of journalism. Is like, this is a space where I enjoy writing. I enjoy writing. I enjoy learning. I enjoy asking questions.
Seems
learning.
like a pretty natural
Seems
fit.
like the natural fit. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Are you a middle child or are you an older?
I'm a middle child.
That's going to be my guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I am the mediator for sure. Are you a middle child?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was adopted though, so it's like I don't know what I grew up as the oldest.
Okay, fair
of
enough.
a lot of kids.
Fair enough. How many siblings? Do you have?
I grew up with oh my gosh, I grew up with 5, so I was the 6th. And then
First.
What's that?
You were
the first.
sixth,
The first
but
of
you were
6.
the first. Yeah.
But I was adopted, so
first
they
and the
had all
best.
their kids. They adopted me, so I was 5, and then we adopted one more. It's a whole thing. But now I have 2
Amazing.
more. So the last year that I was at the house, I was 17. They adopted 2 more boys.
Oh my word.
Yeah. So we
What's
have
that
8.
like? I've always wondered what's that like being a part of. I mean, I know you have a gaggle of kids too, but like, what's that like being a part of a big family? Because it's me. I'm
We
in the
didn't
middle.
get to pick them though. Like,
But is it just like, is it chaos all the time, or is it kind of like it manages?
Depends on the mother. No, honestly, it was. I mean, my siblings, we were homeschooled too.
Okay, wow.
So my mom, I mean, she did homeschool us, but a lot of the curriculum was kind of geared around teaching yourself and learning how to learn.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's helped
a big
me
deal.
immensely now. And that's, you know, if anyone's thinking about homeschooling or, you know, doing a non-traditional route, that is the biggest probably pro to it.
Yeah.
And I think we've talked about this. You would agree probably as well.
I was homeschooled as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's less hand holding, right? Like, especially if you have a
yes.
lot of kids, it's
Yeah.
like,
There's also some cheating involved. There's
I would
also,
imagine.
and then after, a couple
some
months,
more than others, I'm sure.
something sneaks through and then
Yeah.
it's found.
That's amazing.
I don't know what you're talking about here. I feel like I need to go back and reassess how I did it.
Math was difficult.
Oh, I'm so bad. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a running joke to anyone who has any background in news or journalism, period. And I shouldn't generalize because I'm sure there are journalists who are fantastic at math and very good at statistics. And I certainly am not one of those people.
Yeah.
And Matt would tell you, like, he frequently reminds me that I barely passed algebra, like barely. Like, I'm pretty sure Kim Petras
Matt,
had to
the
go
poker player.
in. Yes. Yeah, really.
Counting cards.
Exactly. So, but he gives me a hard time about it. But yeah, I barely passed algebra. I'm pretty sure that my mom went in and talked to the teacher and was like, we all know she's not going to do anything. And
We were just kind of
Just let her go.
just let her go. Let her graduate.
We were talking about math over lunch because Victor was making fun of me for not quickly calculating the tip.
That
Oh,
was,
I cannot.
That was
I
And
get
it's-
anxiety.
But here's the thing.
I can't
very
do
few
it.
times I feel superior to you. That is one of them.
Every day. That's why I just have to keep reminding you of your height. Just
Yeah.
to keep you in
Yeah.
your place.
Yeah, it's true.
No, but I
you
was
can't
gonna say,
visualize.
like, so in school, I was actually really good at math.
Yeah.
And I mean, advanced algebra, calculus, trigonometry, all that stuff. Like I was able to figure it out. But for some reason, I was never good at
Moving the decimal. It's just not.
mental arithmetic. Like,
Well, he was
doesn't matter
having
what it
trouble
is. Like,
in figuring out what 20% of $12 was.
I can't do that.
Okay, come on.
I'm
okay,
You
that
called
may
me
be
short. It's fair game.
But that was not something I ever focused on. Like in school,
yeah,
it was
I
like
didn't.
figuring
I
out in my
didn't
head.
care.
The
Yeah.
interesting thing, though, is my wife, Carolyn,
Yep.
is very good with, in my opinion, mental arithmetic. And she would tell you she was terrible at math in school. So it's funny that, like, the most common uses
Yeah.
for math today, and you're dated, I'm not very good
Not
at.
equipped.
And my wife is great at it, and she was not good at school. So that's something about how useful
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's funny.
Do you think? I was just thinking about journalism. So,
Can
what
we
do you
make this
think?
more about me? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
We'll bring it
I
back
felt
to
like
you.
that
We'll-
was
Don't worry.
a little,
She'll
little snippet.
She'll follow back with you.
I'll answer one sentence and I'll be like, "So, Josiah,
Can you do this math equation for me? And I'll say,
I need you to calculate a tip real quick for me."
But what
Okay.
there's journalism is you have. So it's kind of I kind of think about it because that's one of the routes I thought about going as well. And in video, so I oftentimes it's not just like marketing videos where I show up and I'm like, they have it all planned out. I'm there from the beginning, to the end. So
Right.
producing and directing, and you kind of have to give the story out and you have to connect with the person you're interviewing because they're telling you the story of the company. So there's like this whole process. And there's a lot of different kind of facets of a person that you have to have. You have to be conversational. You have to get along with people. You have to have all these different little skills that you've built up over time. What do you think? What kind of people do you think are drawn to journalism? Like, what kind of skill sets do you think is required in order to be kind of effective in those roles?
I think you have to just really dislike talking to people. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
The primary.
curiosity.
Curiosity,
obviously.
obviously, we've talked about. I definitely think you have to be someone who has you have to have a great deal of empathy. I think you have to be just an empathetic person and understand that whether you're doing, like you referenced, talking to a CEO who you're interviewing for, a brand video for their company or HR director or something like that. I've kind of seen both worlds working in journalism and then switching into the marketing sector. But in journalism, you really have to kind of, I don't want to say like get on the same level as the person you're talking to, but you have to have an ability to meet someone where they're at. You might walk into, and this has happened to me, where you walk into a scene with a photographer and there's been, a tragedy has occurred of some sort, and you're tasked with talking to have to walk up to someone you don't even
Yeah.
know and ask them questions at a time that's, you know, quite scary or difficult or emotional for that person. And you have to be able to, I don't even know really how to describe this as something that I've been told I do, but I don't know how to describe how I do it. Just, you know, not go in.
Relate.
Yeah. Just, I mean, even if you haven't had that lived experience as that person who's going through something, whether, you know, it's a serious or, you know, like you said, you're walking into a very difficult situation, you have to be able to like level with that person and meet them where they're at and have the like emotional capacity to be like, this is a moment where I need to kind of, you know, temper myself or like meet you in that space that you're in and be comfortable there. Even if it's uncomfortable for me, you have to like kind of pretend that you're like, I'm comfortable here, even though I'm really not.
Yeah.
I think you also have to be, you know, be able to build trust with people like quite quickly. I think that's something you learn in journalism, or ways to just make people feel comfortable with you quickly and be able to build that trust enough that they're willing to share with you.
That's a weird one.
Yeah.
Because I've been thinking about that too. It's like this podcast, you know, this is episode 15 roughly.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you're so stiff and you're like, oh, okay, I don't want to look stupid. I want to ask the right questions, you know. But then you have to create like this in a really short amount of time, this like, it's not a space where people feel comfortable.
Right. No, it's not. You're absolutely right.
And it's not something, I don't think it can be something that's like learned real easy. I feel like you either have it or you don't.
I kind of agree. I think there's things that journalism school will teach you like different nuances of kind of having like an open posture, like have a welcoming open posture and things like that. Don't cross your arms, don't look defensive, stuff along those lines. But I do think that it's kind of just like some people are strong in that area and some struggle. I will shout out to my husband. I think he's very good at that. And I think I saw that when we were working together in news as the person who was supposed to be asking the questions. Like sometimes he would ask the better question I would be able to tell right away, like for whatever reason, he's relating to this person on a different level than I'm relating to this person right now. And I'm going to let him take the reins because I know he's going to get the better sound. Or I know he's going to be able to steer this person in the direction where they're more open to share what they've been through or what they're going through. And so
what a
I
great
guess
combo.
Yeah, I mean,
you guys should get married or something.
We should, like, honestly, he's pretty great. He's also very good at drawing sharks, which I know he talked about on the
He did brag about that a little bit.
He's quite good at it. He can't draw anything else, but for whatever reason.
Yeah, that was my brother.
Good.
We should have had him demonstrate that.
I know. When I watched the podcast, I was like, why didn't you make him draw a shark?
See, because you weren't here to ask the question.
That's it. I know.
My brother he would draw stick people and everything stick. He's not an artistic person, but a barracuda, his favorite animal, was actually really good. It was bizarrely
like belongs
good.
in a museum. Yeah, bizarrely
Did you guys?
good.
So you and Matt, you met while you were working together?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to
that's
tell
a love
that
story that's intriguing.
We're gonna have to like.
I'm looking because I'm like, when he watches this, he's gonna be like, oh, she's gonna tell the story.
She's gonna tell us.
I would love to hear the story.
The more embarrassing, the better for him.
Yeah, that's fine. No, it's
we'll have to
not
like follow up
embarrassing.
that first episode to connect it to this one.
We have an hour to hear the story.
Okay.
So.
Really, I was reporting. He joined the station that I worked at. We worked at a station in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and he came on board, I think, like 3 months or 4 months after I was hired. And they put us on the same shift for a while. So we were working as a reporter photographer team, and we did not get along. We did not like each other.
Really?
No. And he would say the same thing. Like for whatever reason, we just like could not get on the same page of what we were doing, to the point where I think like the assignment editor who ran shifts and stuff, like moved us onto different shifts.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then
this is a Hallmark movie, by the way.
This
is a setup to a Hallmark.
Yeah. I mean, it has its elements or parts there, but so then I don't know, a couple months went by, and then for whatever reason, I honestly can't remember, but for whatever reason, we got put back on the same shift together. And I give, again, so much credit to Matt, because he was kind of like, let's just clear the air here. Like, I kind of like don't know why
Oh, really? Wow.
we're not jiving right now, but like we need to figure this out because
This is our job.
that's just our job. And he
Wow.
was like, I think we can do, he's like, I think you're really talented and I think we can do good work together. And so I was kind of like,
And
oh,
also, will you marry me? Is that where it started? He just gave you a ring then? That's
not
it's smooth
then,
thing?
not
Okay.
then. But he did, I will say he earned my respect when he was like, let's
Yeah.
have a frank conversation about this and figure this out. And then we did.
That's a really hard thing to do. That's good on him for that.
Yeah, very good on
Wow.
him. And we ended up doing some really good work together, some really good stories. And don't laugh, I see you.
I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing.
We were doing some really good stories, and then you know it's just like kind of became really good friends, and then obviously good friends worked out.
Yeah.
So
Wow. That's
got
great.
married. But yeah,
That's cool. That's a cool story.
Yeah.
That is a really cool story.
Thanks for
I'm
sharing.
not actually not the first person that I've heard say that they initially did not like their spouse when they met them. I guess it's not
yeah,
like an
my mom and
uncommon
dad.
thing. Yeah. And I did not like him. I mean, we didn't
Just get along.
get along. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you think was it just like taking charge? You both
I think
were
we
the
were
same.
in very different places in our life at that
Okay.
moment. He had kind of, as he had mentioned on the podcast, he worked in Las Vegas and news, and
Yeah.
he was also did the poker thing too.
Degenerate gambler.
Degenerate
Sorry,
gambler
Matt.
/ newsman.
That was the number 2 thing that attracted you to him.
I could have spent like another hour talking to him just about that.
I could tell. I'm like, Victor is like fascinated by this. We need to continue.
Josiah,
on.
I could tell, like, Josiah gives me these subtle hints.
Yeah.
I feel the energy, and it's like, Victor, let's move to the
move
next
it
point. I'll notice like this or this.
It's time. It's time
What
to
am
get
I,
off the
what am
poker
I trying to
play.
say right now?
No, that is a
No.
cool story. That's, I mean, yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to meet
super
someone
cool.
they work with, didn't get along with at first,
Yeah.
but you worked it out? you
No,
know?
and it really was. I think he had been through working news is a difficult career path to begin with.
Yeah.
You see some stuff,
Seems like
even
it.
in like small markets like Cedar Rapids, Iowa. You see some stuff, and I know he talked about that too.
Yeah.
So he had kind of been through it, and I think he was coming back into news, but not really still, you know, enjoying the business itself and kind of like the things that come with working in news. It's a
Yeah.
very stressful job. The hours are pretty terrible, to be honest. And the pay's fantastic. So, so there's a lot of things that you're up against to begin with. And I think he was kind of like, I was new into news and I was like, just like overly excited probably
Oh,
about
really?
everything. And like, we need to get this shot and we need to get that shot and we're overshooting everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure some of that he was probably
He's like
okay.
the crusty old, you know,
Not cr-
I've been on this camera for years.
No, but I think he knew, and I learned this from him too. Like he knew what we needed to get. Like
Yeah.
he knew what do we need to get to tell this story. And I was probably overly like panicky of like we need to get
Yeah.
extra, we need to get more. And he's like, no, really, this is what we need, and we're good, and we've got what we need to tell the story. And I think once we figured that out, and I started trusting that, you know, he could see things visually that I didn't always see, and
Yeah.
and I think he has a very good visual eye. Then it's like once you build that trust, then it's like, okay, I'm going to let you do your thing. I'm going to give you some cues on what's my writing going to be like, what's my story going to sound like, and as long as you feel like you've got what we need to support it, we're good. And you tell
Yeah.
your story. And I think once you build that relationship with someone, that's when you really start telling good stories and
So
putting
do you
good
do
things
any, have you done any doc work with Matt? Because he does doc
yeah.
stuff too, right?
I'm trying to think of like the last.
I'm just trying to think of like how does that differ from like, it kind of seems like a little similar format with journalism. Like
Yeah.
you're going out where the story happens, you kind of collect the stuff, and then you almost have to, you write the story afterward, right? To kind of
Right.
lace the details together.
Well, I know that some of the work that we did with NAMI DuPage, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, it was very documentary style, a little bit longer form. And by longer form, I mean, like, I think the pieces that we worked on generally were like between 7 and 8 minutes. So they were
Sure.
kind of long. But yeah, I think we definitely, like, we kind of fall back. Like, I would feel us kind of falling back into that pattern of like, I'm producing and driving, and I have my questions that I want to ask, and I know we know from talking with the marketing department at NAMI, like, what are we trying to achieve with this piece, and what's the goal for it? What platform is it going to live on? What do you want it to do for you? What do you want it to do for the organization? So I kind of come in with my prepared list of questions to try to move things in that direction, so to speak. But
a little more prepared than you can be like, hey, this just happened on this side of town.
right,
Go see what's
exactly.
going
Yeah,
on.
it's very, very different in that way. But still, I think you do kind of fall into that pattern of like, I have your best laid plans, right? I have my list of things that we like, boxes that we need to tick and check, questions that we need to ask, answers we need to get. But sometimes you do notice like, you kind of have to let the person you're interviewing like lead you a little bit too, because you don't want to miss something. And that's definitely a skill that I picked up in journalism, is like, if you come almost too prepared and too like, this is what we need to get. Sometimes I think you miss what could potentially be the real story. And so when you let the person you're interviewing start talking, and even if they're taking you in a direction for a little bit that perhaps you're like, I'm not really sure this is where we need to go, but I'm going to let this happen, and let's just see what he or she has to say.
That's got to be an art form in itself.
Yeah.
Like, how far do you let them
how far do you go? Right. And then you pull them back in. And I think I've definitely worked with people who sometimes let people go off a little too much. And you're like,
what are we talking about?
And you're
even?
looking at the time and you're like, we are now on hour 3 of this recorded interview. And we're going to have to sort
Speaking
through
of
this
which,
footage.
we're on hour 3 of the podcast.
And then there's people where it's like, I've heard them like cut things off. And I'm like, no,
That was a good-
that was
yeah.
good. Let them talk.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe it's not the entire thing isn't, you don't end up using that entire story or that entire piece. But sometimes letting people tell stories that aren't necessarily, again, within those boxes that you need to check, so to speak, like that makes them more comfortable and puts them more in an open, emotionally open state where they feel like they can share with you, because you're letting them talk versus trying to direct them and lead them exactly where you want them to go, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, 100%. No, I knew, that's why I was so fascinated about your background.
So
First day,
unprofessional.
guys, okay?
That's awesome.
Thanks.
First
You
day.
make my job so easy. No,
part of looking good is just, looking better than the people around you. So I'm just trying
Your
to
eye
help
candy.
just be like,
your eye candy. This way.
bang my teeth on this mic.
No, but I love the backstories of people, because the things that you've done and the things you've been a part of, it kind of defines who you are now. So your journalism background really kind of interested me, and I'm sure that helps you in your marketing day to day, every day.
Absolutely.
But there was an in between.
I want to stick to. I want to. I
Okay.
have a couple more questions about
journalism?
if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Okay, I do.
Okay,
Go
Dad.
ahead.
Well, because your husband's shared a really tough story with us here, where he showed up on a scene, and it was kind of a horrific scene of a little girl who just died.
Yes, I remember him sharing that one. And when he brought it up, I was like, oh gosh, I remember that one.
You were there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was
So,
great.
I mean, I don't want to spend time talking about bad things that happened, but I do. It's hard to separate your emotions sometimes from for me anyway. I mean, I've just been interviewing patients for a hospital marketing campaign, patients' success stories.
Right.
But it's like heartbreaking times that they went through.
Right.
And it's like I can't say I know what you went through, but listening to them, it's like a lot of times I'll tear up with them. Not, trying to be strong and trying,
Right,
but
right.
that's just kind of I think I'm a little bit more sensitive maybe. And I asked Matt this question, but I'm wondering if it's difficult or if it was difficult over those years to kind of separate yourself from the things that you were capturing. And, number one, was it difficult? And then how do you kind of realign yourself after hearing or seeing a heartbreaking story? And you have to emote, you have to relate, but at the same time you have to step back and be like, that's outside of me. That's outside of my personal life.
Right. Yeah.
Not let it leak into your personal life. Maybe
100%. It's difficult. And I think that's why you do see, and when I say news is difficult and journalism in general is a difficult profession to be in, that's one of those reasons why. I think some people are able to, I don't want to say shut off or anything, or kind of build a wall into they know they have to cover the story. It's a very difficult story. to cover. And so they kind of put up guardrails or whatever, emotional guardrails, if you want to call it that. But I know that it's incredibly stressful. Some people certainly handle it better than others. I'm, like I said, I think I'm more of an empathetic person. It did affect me, and it's probably a reason why and there's a lot of reasons why I got out of news, but like certainly that was a factor of it too, because I never wanted to get to the point where I was like, capable of turning that off, turning that switch off, to going to a scene like the one that Matt described where a little girl had died, and it was not a very good scene to be at. And I never wanted to get to a point where I didn't feel the full weight of that. And I think there are definitely like people who get to a point where they're able to like turn it off and just be like, you know what, I'm here to do my job. I do my job. I go home, and they don't, reflect on that or think about it, and they're able to like fully turn off. And I definitely felt like I was getting to that point where I wasn't even registering, like I said, the weight of what I was seeing or the scene that I was at. And once I got out of news and I would watch stories, a good example of this is right before I ended up leaving KCRG and I ended up working for a company that did research and consulting for television stations. So I was still kind of in the business, but outside of the business a little bit. And right before I left, I was covering a story about two twins from a small town, or they weren't twins, they were cousins. I think 8 years old and like 6 years old. They were quite young, and they were abducted. And that was like oh my gosh, I think they were missing for like 8 months. They're called the Evansdale girls. If you look them up, it was quite a famous story because it was your typical small town Iowa. I don't think there were more than like 3,000 or 4,000 people in that whole town. Wow. And they went missing, and they were missing for quite a while. And I remember going to that and thinking, oh, this is so sad, but you're still like not really feeling it emotionally. Like you're there to do your job. And then when I got out was when they ended up finding the girls, and they were deceased. I think they had found them at a state park or something along those lines. And I remember crying that night. Of course, I found out at work when I'm at this new job that I've taken. But I went home and I cried because I was like, that I was there for that. And you hear the stories from the parents and the friends and relatives who are missing these girls. And I was so like just trying to like emotionally check out from that. And then I was, once you're stepped back, you're able to really realize like that emotional weight of what you were involved, what you saw and what you reported on. And so it's difficult. It's a very difficult thing. But I also think it's important, like you're saying, to not fully put those guardrails up, especially when you're interviewing, like in your situation where you're interviewing patients or success stories and things like that. But if you don't allow yourself to have like that feeling to some degree, to some level, that's where that you're not relating with your interview at all. And I think they can feel that from you if you're like completely checked out in that way. So,
I mean, I think that's what we're talking about is that piece that makes people comfortable. Yeah. Like the ability to emote on that same level and
the
kind of feel
genuine compassion, and being able to, like, it's one thing, like you're talking about being trained for the body language and things like that.
Right.
And there's only so much training you can do.
Yeah.
But it can still be a show. You got to be able to genuinely connect with people.
I agree.
And psychology, I think it's weird as I look at kind of my career. I'm like, all of my favorite things are kind of combined into this area of video production, filmmaking, documentary work. Psychology is a huge, I love psychology. It's one of my passions. It's just like learning about people, learning about things that make people tick. What part does psychology play into kind of, I guess, reporting, but then also your work now?
Oh, psychology.
Do you think about that much?
No.
No? Interesting.
Victor really wants to turn this into like a psychological thriller.
Well, I mean, I get it. So I don't really think of it as psychology as much as I think of it as like, I guess to some degree, understanding your audience and understanding what motivates them. So I guess there is a degree of psychology involved in that. It's like what motivates people, and what makes them feel connected or disconnected. And that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about switching from journalism to marketing is there is almost this like research psychology component. Having worked before Woods, I worked at, as I mentioned, at a company that did research and consulting for local TV stations all over the country. And it just understanding what motivates people, what drives them to, you know, want to buy a product or read this article or I always found that aspect of marketing fascinating. And that is obviously that's psychology. I probably didn't understand the question when you asked. I was like, psychology. Oh, you mean
not therapy?
You know, you're talking about persona and understanding your audience and how they think and behave. And yes, I find that really interesting and really fascinating. And it's an important. I personally. One of the things that I asked before I started at the company I'm with now, Woods, when I asked the marketing director, do you feel passionate about research? And she said yes. And I was like, okay, because that's kind of a deal breaker for me. I don't want to go somewhere and be tasked with this job of creating and crafting and managing content if we don't have a really clear understanding of who our audience is, what matters to them, what motivates them, what do they like outside of our products, what do they like, dislike, how do they spend their time? Like it's very difficult to create craft meaningful content if you don't truly understand who you're making that content for. Yeah. And so that was 100% in the interview. I'm like, that's a deal breaker. If you're not into understanding, if we're just kind of like,
so again, being a journalist, like you were turning the table.
Yeah, I was going to say, you flipped the script.
Interviewing them. So if I'm going to work here.
But I mean truly, and I feel like if there's anyone listening to this who works in, you know, in marketing or in the content marketing space, I think would agree with me that it's like, if you don't have that foundational understanding and you're not willing to continually check in on that and check the pulse of that every year, every other year, then you're just throwing stuff at the wall and trying to figure out, oh, that's stuck, but I don't know why. And I think that is to your point, that's the journalism aspect of it, of like, you really need to understand. You really need to know who you're talking to and what do they want to hear from you and why.
What was that process of research like? So when you did join the company?
So they had already done it, which I was kind of bummed about.
Okay. What would have been your approach?
So I think the best thing that you can do, I've certainly I would call them like keeping your pulse on the audience is like just doing surveys throughout the year. Typically we do that. And that's a very small scale tactic of just, you know, reaching out to a core group of customers. Excuse you.
Sorry.
Again, how unprofessional.
By the way, do you want any water? Do you need water?
I have my my Go juice.
You were looking at it like it was empty.
No, I was checking. I'm like, am I done yet? No, I have a horrible caffeine coffee drinker. It's really bad. So one moment while I
you're good.
Sip my drug here.
Nobody knows what time of day we should film this. It could be 6 o'clock in the morning here.
Yeah. It's not like almost 4. What was I saying?
Surveys.
So that's just a tactic that we do, I think, to try to keep a pulse on like kind of various initiatives and things that we're putting forward to customers. But
and that's via what medium?
I think it's usually like an emailed survey.
Oh, okay.
And then when we go to trade shows, we'll always survey the people at the trade shows, give them a little tchotchke. This was one of our recent tchotchkes that we gave out for taking a survey. But that's on a small scale. What Kristen did, our brand director, before I came on board, was what I was hoping. I was like, oh, darn, you did. I mean, good for you for doing it already. But like, I love being a part of these because, again, I find it fascinating. It was a brand health study. So it was really using a third-party market research company. I'm not entirely sure who we used, but really finding out like, the people who are loyal to you, why are they loyal to you? And the people who are the people who really dislike you, what is it about you that they really dislike? I mean, like it digs in, and the people in the middle that we call swayable, like what are the things that they care about and what might be able to move the needle for them one way or another. And it looks at really a whole variety of issues for your customer base and trying to understand like how, what are some things and what are some areas where there's opportunity for us to push initiatives down the road and try to get them turned over to the good guys, so to speak, and like where are those openings for us and where can we make headway? And it kind of gives you a little bit of a roadmap into the customer's mindset. I think it was a mix. Again, I want to say that it was a mix of quantitative and qualitative, and I think maybe I don't know if we did if you're familiar with like ethnographies or no. So it's like kind of like going into someone's home and like interviewing, like going onto their land while they use the product and asking them questions about how they're setting it up and why they're doing it that way. It's like ethnography.
Ethnography.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Someone might call me out in the comments and be like, that's not exactly right. But
but that's without filming it, or it's just having a rep out.
Sometimes people do film it. Actually,
Okay.
Matt has been a part, I won't say which company, but Matt was a part of that for a quite a large company. This was years ago. It was probably coming up on like 10 years that he did this, but
And that's purely just for research.
yeah,
it's
it's
not
just for research,
Yeah, okay.
just to understanding their mindset when they're with a product. And sometimes we do those very specifically for product development. Kind of like bringing someone a prototype and having them kind of mess around with it and run it do, and then ask them a lot of questions. But sometimes it's just understanding pain points. One of the big pain points in our industry is connection to the tractor, because you can imagine very large piece of equipment, not light, picking up, we call it the drive line, but it's like what connects it to the tractor. It's like 80, 90 pounds. And, some people are, older individuals or farm for a long time. And they're like, hooking this up to the tractor is an absolute nightmare. I hate it. And so we register that as a pain point, and then we created a system to fix that and make it a little bit easier to connect. So those are some of the things that you learn through that market research interview process.
That's what stuck out to me when you were talking about it. It's like we find out what people hate about us. Like, what is it they don't like about us? That's a big deal.
I think that's like arming yourself with knowledge and hearing the things you don't want to hear about. Like you have to be open to hearing what people don't like about you. How are you going to, and again, some of it maybe is justified. Some of it is like, maybe, and some of it's totally unjustified, but you have to be open to hearing about it if you're going to make any gains in how you connect with your audience. Gains in how, like, determining what kind of a message or story do we need to be putting out there. And sometimes that varies product to product or initiative to initiative, but like you have to be open to that. And if you're closed off to hearing, the negative stuff, then it's kind of like an echo chamber, right? You just want to hear the things that you like, and that's not helping you grow.
So that sounds like not just for marketing purposes, it's also for development purposes as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, I think wonderful. I'm saying this because
This
I know
podcast is brought to you by Woods Manufacturing.
Exactly. They are great, though. They're really great. And they are very big in voice of customer research, which I did have an opportunity to sit in on a session for that. Like, I want to say it's been almost a year that we did that VOC, and they brought in, I want to say it was like a dozen, maybe 15 farmers. And again, farmers, when I say that, I say like farmers, but also just rural landowners, people who have used our products in the past, people who like our products, people who have used it and maybe moved away from it, don't care for it anymore. Again, not being afraid to hear negative, bringing them in and doing a walk around of the equipment and kind of asking them, having them look at things, not trying to lead them anywhere. Again, not going crazy down that road of let me tell you what I need you to tell me, versus just open conversation. And I think they do a wonderful job of that. And I think, again, I can't say enough, because it helps me do my job. If I know that the information is good, then I can make really informed decisions in how I approach my role as a content manager, and the types of things that we need to create and where do we need to put our resources and why. If the information is just kind of like, oh, we think we know versus we know, then it makes my job even more difficult. And I'm like, I'd rather have you say, you know. I'm sure that. And that makes me feel confident. And okay, well, then I think we need to, I know we need to go in this direction. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's so funny. This reminded me of, I was on two different, one was a video shoot for a medical product, but it was an app. And they had, I'm forgetting what they call them. They get a group of people together and review.
Focus group.
Thank you. So as a part of two of those, and I was fascinated. I was like,
focus groups are the best.
Yeah. I was operating the camera, but I really wanted to just be like absorbing everything behind the window.
Listen, when I was at Magid, we haven't even really talked about Magid yet. Shout out to Magid.
What is that?
Magid was the market research company that I worked for. They're based out of Minneapolis. They have their initial founding office was in Iowa, which is how I ended up working there after I worked at KCRG. And I was able to sit in, I want to say like on across the time that I was there, like 2 or 3 focus groups. I wasn't really a part of the research division. I was more on the consulting side. So I would go to the TV. We would arm ourselves with the research. Then we would go to the TV stations and we would work with their promotions team. We would work with their reporters, their anchors, their producers, their digital team, and all of that, again, being like the foundation of what we were consulting them on was always informed by research. And the focus groups, amazing. Like
Yeah.
they're just amazing. It's an amazing little like glimpse into like just people's brain and how they think
Yeah.
and process things, and some of the psychology.
Jillian, psychology.
I think I just like, you know, what's that movie where Will Ferrell's like, I just blacked out. Like, I think
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you asked me that question, I literally
No,
like just
I mean,
blacked out.
I think, you know, I don't know if a lot of people might think about it as therapy
Yeah.
or as, you know, talking out your feelings, but no,
Right.
it's what makes people tick.
What makes you tick.
What makes you decide to
Yes.
choose this over that.
Yeah.
The little minutiae of decision
I know.
making.
It's fascinating. It is.
Yeah.
And we would show them videos. We would show them newscasts, or we would show them like promotional spots for news stations. And then our focus group leader would ask questions, and behind the glass, the people from the station would be
Wait,
sitting there.
so I'm not understanding. This was a focus group for
It was
news?
for a TV station. Yeah. For a local TV station.
And to help determine what?
I think the most, I'm trying to remember the last one I sat in on, because this was like, I'm dating myself.
Like audience
this
responses?
Was like 7 years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, it's audience responses. So they would take, I think the respondent pool, they had like 3 groups. So they would bring in like 20 to 25 people in each group, and they would come over the course of an evening. And we would have pre-prepared pieces from the station that we would show them. I think I'm trying to remember, but I think, again, goals are different based on the type of group. Like, what is your
Yeah.
goal going into this? But in this particular case, we were showing them, I think, one newscast. We were looking at an evening newscast, and then we were looking at promotional spots that would support the evening newscast. And we were just getting their feedback and their thoughts on
see.
that. And yeah, it's just so interesting. I mean, just people are hilarious. Like they're not trying to be hilarious, but they are. And I also love that. I don't know when people come to I've never been a part of a focus group on that side of it before as an actual participant. But I think you go in and you're like, you know what you're there for. You don't necessarily know like why, like what's going to come of this, but you kind of know why you're there.
Yeah.
And so people are just like brutally honest. Like
Yes.
they really
Yeah.
don't hold back.
I was a part of a group.
Were you?
And so my friend, she was part of a company, like sort of like a marketing internship, sort
Yeah.
of for like a line of soap and like
Sure.
man's hair wash and all that.
Man
and
soap.
yeah,
Man-
I think
man
it might have
soap.
been called man soap.
I'm just a
Genius.
marketing genius right here.
But so she invited us, and it was like a group of like, I don't know, 8, 10, 12 dudes.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I was like, this sucks. You know, I was one of those
Yeah.
brutally honest, because I was
Yeah.
like, nothing appeals. Like, the packaging is awful.
Yeah.
This seems, you know, those yellow bars of soap that
Yes.
like mechanics use. It looked kind of like that, like the branding of it. I was like, this is. If I were walking on an aisle, I'm not going to
So
buy that
less
just
soap
because it's
like that.
ugly.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I
No.
was brutally honest.
But that's what they're
And
there
I don't know-
for.
yeah, I
Again,
suppose.
I give so much credit to like market research is quite expensive too. So
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
so I think for companies that like startups or smaller companies that are like willing to invest in that space, I give them all the credit in the world, because I
Yeah.
do think that it's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because you need to hear that. You need to hear like, this is gross. Victor said this is gross.
I don't think they liked what I said, but either.
It looks like
I
mechanics.
said it
soap.
out loud because
I would never let this soap touch my body.
But if you chop wood for a living, or if you work under cars, you might
Yeah.
not care.
Yeah, you're like, this is for you.
So, yeah.
This is the product for you.
I'm more preppy, as
Yeah.
you can.
You need a polished soap.
Yeah. Dove.
Dove, yeah.
Dove men.
So for me.
Yeah, no, I forgot about that. I honestly forgot about that. That was so interesting, and I obviously, you know, you get honed into your thing that you're doing, and you forget like there's that part of the business as well,
Yeah.
the research and all that. Oh shoot, question left me. I was going to ask about for the news. Then were you basically showing people different ads?
Yeah, well, the creative team at the station had put together a couple different. I think one of them was like an evening promo of their team, their evening team, and then
I see.
Yeah, and then they had like a 15-second spot. There was like a holiday. God, I can't remember now. Some type of holiday that was coming up, and they were doing some type of promotion around that. It's just like, again, like your feel good. a lot of news was trying to figure out too within these focus groups, like which team members resonated with the audience. Gosh, and again, if we really want to go down the news rabbit hole, which I feel like Victor is just leaning us.
No, because I apologize if I am.
But I just mean that it was kind of like, I think about it now and I'm like, it's kind of silly because as we're seeing, there's sort of this big shift happening away from like traditional TV journalism and like morning shows, like TV morning shows and things like that. There's kind of a shift happening away to more of like this setup. Independent journalism and things like that is really taking off. And so I kind of think back to like some of the questions that we would ask and some of the things that we would be looking at with these stations. And a lot of it was like, you know, trying to figure out, do these people like look good together? Do they make you comfortable? Like, do they make you feel good? Like trying to figure out the team dynamic of who do we put on which show and why. And then there was.
Do you have some feedback to give us on like?
I think we're going to have to bring you guys up.
This is the most interesting combo.
I think
in my
Victor
view.
needs to go on the morning show and Josiah needs to go on the evening show.
What if we just sit on the opposite side of the table?
Yeah.
And wear masks.
There. Perfect. I know.
I'm not talking like medical masks, like masks that are like full on masquerade
like
style.
The ones you rob banks with.
That's terrifying.
No, but I ask that because that's still, you know, like marketing psychology. You're marketing a team of anchors, you know.
Right, exactly.
You know,
that's exactly right.
And I think people don't, I get told a lot like, oh, what you do is so cool. You know, documentary work's cool. Commercials cool for people who aren't a part
your
of the
hair's
work.
so cool. Oh, your outfit is just on point. He just hears this all day long.
All of it.
No, but you know, like people love the industry.
Yeah, well, it's
but
the same way
don't.
people tell me it's so cool that you get to travel
Yes.
to like a Hilton Garden Inn in like Louisville.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That looks out over a parking lot of an abandoned amusement park.
In 2 weeks, I'll be in the middle of Utah in a probably crumbly old hotel.
Doesn't that make you laugh? Especially when I worked for Maggot, I traveled a lot more. It was before we had kids. And I mean, I would travel maybe like every other, not nearly as much as some of the other consultants that were on the road every week, but certainly like every other month I would travel. But they were like small TV stations, all like Shreveport, Louisiana. Actually, one of the nicer places I got to go to was Santa Barbara, California. That was fun. I was like,
nice.
I could see how people would want to
watch the news here.
Yeah.
But I think people get this a lot happening.
There's a lot
instead of Iowa.
Yeah, no, it's quite different. Different than Iowa. My introduction to Santa Barbara was like driving in. We landed and then we got a taxi and we were heading to the hotel and there was like a man like rollerblading down the street with like, I think he had like blue hair and he had like shorty shorts on. And I was like, we're not in Iowa anymore, folks.
You were about there around the same time, weren't you?
Probably me. It was probably me.
It was Victor.
No, but I think people get this false perspective, false idea of like what we do. And it's like, no, I mean, listen, a lot of it is just like work.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun. Like there's definitely moments where you're like, wow, what we're doing today, this is interesting. This is cool.
Yeah.
I would not want to do anything else.
We've talked about this before
there's
too.
a lot
of it's more like who you're working with.
You
know?
100%. I do agree with that. Yeah, because it's like 80-20, right? There's going to be 20% of what you're doing that's kind of like, ugh.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. No one's ever 100% happy with what they're doing all the time. So I do think having a really good team of people around you and people you enjoy working with makes that 20% kind of like, all right.
For sure.
We'll slog through this together.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Would you rather work on a project that's super cool with terrible people or something that's like mediocre with super cool people?
It's so true. Yes. I know the point you're making. My answer is yes.
One that you would expect to be no.
I actually, have you ever seen
You can't say no to Josiah's questions.
No. Yes. Have you ever watched Comedians in Cars?
Yes.
Okay. So there's an episode where I think it's him and Chris Rock. And Chris Rock's like, you know, you can go have like a steak dinner at like a 5-star restaurant with like a terrible person and the meal is going to be terrible. He's like, or you could go and have a hot dog, like a 50-cent hot dog with a really interesting person, have a great conversation. And that's the best meal you've ever had. And I think that relates to the people you work with. Like you could work on a mediocre project that you're kind of like, okay. But if you're working with people who make it fun and who try to find ways to level it up, like, okay, we all kind of know this is like a little bit of a turning chicken salad into, like whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a nicer way.
But
Polishing a turd.
exactly.
Term we
But
hear a fair bit.
if you come into it with people who are
What does that mean? No, it's like a term we hear. You and I hear a lot.
No, I'm just saying, like, I don't know, like, say, like, the corporate video making culture or
Right.
something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
It's really, a lot of it's really boring stuff.
Yeah,
You're
it
just like,
is.
how can we make this look,
right.
lipstick on a pig?
There you
Maybe
go.
that's a better
Exactly.
term.
No, it's well, and I think you got to see, like Josiah, you got to see the people that, the Woods team that came in here and we worked together and like we just have fun.
That's-
like
yeah,
we
that's cool.
genuinely enjoy each
Yeah.
other's company and yeah, we're always like, there's times when we're like, okay, this is not the most exciting project that we're working on, but
Yep.
we're going to have fun with it and we're going to find ways to bring it up a notch.
We
And
can at least make fun of each other through the
Exactly.
process.
exactly.
Yeah. And
Can we talk a little bit about your writing?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Do you
where
want me to
gonna
get
go
my
next,
diary
but
out?
Yes.
Is this the part of the show?
Go back to like 12 years old,
Yeah, right.
Jillian. What you were you talking now?
Someone said my name wrong today and it really upset me.
In the most profound way.
Yes.
Yeah. Because
so-
you do
so the
creative
first time-
writing.
So first time I met you was on one of Matt's shoots, or I guess both of your shoots. But
Yeah.
I saw you and I thought you were the talent.
Oh, really? Was
Like, oh,
I?
she
Because
must be
I
the-
actually have been in the past
You
on
weren't.
on at least two. Of,
No, it was
Yeah.
it was something for St. Charles. But
Oh, okay,
I
sure.
think-
Oh, yeah, that was our first time working together. Yeah, that was the this St. Charles
Tourism?
Business Alliance. It was their first. It was coming out of COVID, I think,
That could have been it. Yeah.
where they were doing the kind of like, hey, we're open for business again. Please come patron our businesses, please.
that might have been it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that one. That was
Yeah.
well put together.
Oh, I loved it. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorite. First of all, again, I'm gonna like just lay compliments out on people, but like Alyssa, I'm gonna say her maiden name because that's how I know her maiden name. Alyssa Purdy, I got it right. Alyssa Purdy, who was the marketing director at the time, or marketing, kind of like in my role, marketing content person for the St. Charles Business Alliance. She was just fantastic, and she was. I think anytime you get to work with a client that's like, I'm not saying hands the reins over to you completely, but recognizes
Trust
that
what you were there
they know,
brought there
right?
for,
Exactly. Like we hired you to do a job, and we trust that you're going to execute on it. And certainly, Matt and I brought our idea to them of kind of how we. I think the way we pitched it is like we kind of want to do like a thank you letter from the businesses to the people of St. Charles, saying, thank you for being there for us at a time that was really, really challenging for us. And now we're asking you again to like, we're open, come back, we're ready for you. But it was almost like a love letter in a way of like, thank you for
Yeah.
coming around us and supporting us as a community. And now we're ready to open our doors again. And we want you to come back. And she was like, I dig it. I like it. And that was pretty much it. Like we gave her the concept and the idea, but as far as like how we composed it, how Matt chose to shoot it, she kind of helped with arranging the businesses that we would focus on. There was a purpose behind that. But
it seemed like you were
otherwise-
kind of producing the project.
Yes,
too,
yeah.
right?
I wrote the script for that,
Yeah.
but I also produced it, and she was very good about. I'm going to help you get the ducks in the row that you need so that you guys are ready to go on the day of the shoot. But I trust what you're doing here, and I like the concept, and I'm going to let you do your thing. I'm sure we've all kind of been in situations where you work with a client who's very like micromanaging, right? Like we
Yeah.
have all experienced that, whether it's in the creative sector
They
or
think
corporate
they have
sector.
good ideas.
They think they have good ideas.
They don't.
I have a good idea. No, you don't. No, but
Yeah,
I mean,
we could shoot it that way.
yeah, exactly.
That's
oh my
not making it in
goodness.
the edit.
No, or you're just like, Matt used to do this in news and it would always make me laugh. Like I had to walk away because I would be like, all right, I know what he's doing right now. And someone would be like, you go to these things and people as a news person, they're so excited to have you there. They're like, cause it's like their chili cook off and they're like, KCRG's here. Yeah. And they're telling you they're like, you need to get the duck race. You need to get the chili stand.
Get the
you
shot
need
of
to
this
get
out of chili.
Exactly. And Matt would be like, I knew he was like definitely not hitting record. And he would be like,
Oh my gosh, I've definitely done that.
Let me zoom in on that.
I literally one time
exactly.
had a client be like, "Can you shoot this?" And I actually think my memory card was full, and I was like, "I know I'm not going to use this shot." I was like, I looked at my AC, I was like, Yeah, let's do it. Pointed the camera and literally waited like 15 seconds.
You got the memo. He's like,
and he's like, and you made him so happy, right?
Yeah,
The guy was like, yes.
Yeah, he was happy. He was like contributing, but isn't that part of the thing?
That's
is like
it.
making them
feel like exactly. And I think some people need to feel that more than others.
Yeah.
just like a child.
Just exactly.
Clients are childs. That's the
They're all
takeaway.
different. They all have their own unique personalities, and I think that is to me a skill that I do think that you develop. Is the more you do it, the better you get at managing
Sure.
that aspect of it. Yeah.
Are you gonna say something, Kiko?
Yeah, I was gonna say I usually do that at weddings as well. Like, there's like, oh, here, take this picture. It's so cool. Like,
I can
I already
imagine.
took that picture,
Yeah.
but hey, let me click this button.
Yeah, right.
Halfway
Do you make
in.
the sound? Do you go click?
No, if I'm shooting with a flash,
That would be next level.
click. No,
I
or if
love
I'm
it.
shooting with a flash, I'll hit the test button on the flash, and it just flashes. And like,
There you
oh,
go.
I would just hold
Perfect.
up your phone and do the flashlight on and off.
but yeah, that's the thing I do too.
But it makes them so happy,
Yeah, it
right?
does,
Like,
yeah.
you're like, they
Yeah.
felt like they contributed. They were a part of this team, this whatever.
Meanwhile,
but
you probably got the shot somewhere else in much better light.
Yeah,
much better
100%.
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the thing that struck me about a number of the projects I worked on with you guys was just how I love the writing style, like just very natural and
Thank
know,
you.
not contrived. It was saying the message in like a genuine way, and maybe that comes from kind of your journalistic background. It's just like you're kind of able to connect with the audience.
Oh,
You want to talk to you about like your writing style at all? And how much of that do you still do today?
I would say I don't know. I feel like the word authentic is kind of like overused. So it's kind of the way like we overuse the word innovative.
Innovative,
everything's innovative,
authentic,
cutting edge. But I definitely like,
organic.
organic. That's
Keep going.
let's get all those
you
words
finish
in.
your thought.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. I think my writing style, it definitely comes from being in journalism and like constantly seeking the emotional center of what it is that you're talking about.
The emotional center.
Yeah, like sometimes it's easy. You're doing like corporate things and stuff like that. That's a little more, I don't know. You're kind of like, okay, how do I find the emotion in this? Or doing a like recruitment video, like a corporate brand video or something that's like quite dry. But one of the gentlemen that I worked with at Maggot, who was a reporter, news director, he's one of my mentors. I just adore him. He's retired now. His name's Nick Lawler. He's retired in West Palm Beach, Florida. Shout out to Nick. He's amazing. But he worked at he was in the heyday of news. Like he worked when news was like, you were like Ron
Local
Burgundy.
news
You
was
were
the big show.
That's it. You were the real deal. And he is a fantastic writer. And I learned a lot of the skills of like how I write and the style that I write in, thanks to him. I do attribute a lot of that to him. He is wonderful. But one of the things that he said to me early on and kind of trained me in was he would call it the 3 Ps: people, pacing, and perspective. And so whenever I'm writing, I'm always trying to keep in my mind, like the people, I kind of equate that to be the emotion. Like, who is this person? What's making them tick? Where's that emotional center? Pacing, that whole concept of, not too long, not too short, just right.
Hit the beats.
There you go. And then the perspective, trying to kind of, again, put yourself in that point of view or perspective that you need to tell that story in an authentic way. So I have always kind of kept the 3 Ps as like
that's good.
something that
I'd heard
just
that
brings
before.
me, it just sort of brings me back if I'm struggling to write something. Even now, if I'm working on a script for Woods, and again, trying to find people, pacing, and perspective and tractor attachments, but it's there. You can find it.
Yeah.
And it's just a good way for me if I'm struggling to be like, let me go back to, that's my basic. Like, let's go back to the basic and see if I'm hitting on these 3 things and what can I change or rewrite to try to better capture that. So,
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you write? Because there's different types of kind of ads. There's kind of creative ones, and then there's more like factual kind of. How do you approach when you like having to sell something, but in a creative way?
How do I approach trying to sell something in a creative? So my whole job, Victor?
Summarized in 47
Well, but
seconds.
I'm just sorry, I'm just giving you a hard time.
No, you're good.
Then I'm not the only one who has to do it. I appreciate you helping out. That's one
Here.
of my primary missions. Now you're making me feel better.
I feel like maybe I'm not asking it correctly, but maybe a better, I don't know, I guess how to ask that question. I had it in my mind and then it slipped away. But do you have an approach to writing when you start something besides the 3 Ps?
Yeah.
Let's say you're selling an area, that to come back to shop at Lake Geneva or
Sure.
not Lake St. Charles, right?
Sure.
What is your approach to kind of finding out all the information pieces and compiling it and making it into something like creative and fun? Does that make sense?
Follow more. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think I can, for St. Charles is always easier because your work, like that's a production and a story that kind of is like, it's sort of laid bare. Like everyone was very emotional during COVID, after COVID. Certainly if you're a small business owner during that time period, lots of feelings. And so that was sort of easy to be like, this is where we're going to live. We're going to live in this space. And I'm going to approach that writing from, like I said, I just envision this and I hear this as a thank you letter. That's what this has to be. And then it's kind of like putting the words to paper and figuring out the right combination of words.
How did you come to that idea though? The thank you letter?
Sheer
Or the love
brilliance.
Just, because, I mean,
yeah, no, that's a fair question.
does
I'm
it
trying
just
to think
kind of
about
come?
it. Just sort of, Matt and I always kick around ideas. Like anytime we're
Okay.
getting ready to start working on a project, we've been tasked with like clients, like, can you give us a concept? We'll usually like literally just like sit and this was before we had 2 kids. I always laugh because 2 is like nothing compared to, 2 kids. And we're like,
14.
14. Yeah. So, but we would just kind of like sit in the office and like just sort of kick around ideas to each other. And I remember kind of going back and forth with him about like, he already, I think, had a vision for like the types of shots even that he wanted to get. We knew we were definitely, if we did this job, we were definitely gonna be in a restaurant. We were definitely gonna be in a retail shop. Like there were some locations that we knew were likely a part of this, this piece that they wanted.
I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think that's kind of what I was asking is like, you have parameters that you have to fit into like a creative script. And
I'm with
sorry,
you.
I wasn't asking that correctly, but that's where I find the difficulty. Like you have to, okay, this guy wants to sell this.
Right.
So how do I interweave, make it a creative and get what he wants?
Yeah, and I'm a total smart aleck, by the way. I was like, I apologize.
I was trying to figure out how to say it. So
no, that's exactly right. That is what it is. You have guardrails. Like you have, and I think guardrails kind of depends on the client too, right?
Yes.
Like St. Charles, they were there, but they were loose. It was like, we definitely know we want to talk to this restaurant. We definitely know we want this retail shop involved. We definitely know we want you to, the mayor has to be a part of it. We definitely want him in this to some degree. And so you kind of have these little like bullet points that are thrown to you and you're like, okay, now come back. And so,
and what would these people say?
And exactly.
And that one,
was
that the one where like the different people were saying them?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
it was
she'd written a script.
Trying to remember. Sometimes I have my scripts memorized. That's like depending on how often, how much I had to listen to it.
Do you always read it back or play it back?
Not like regularly.
No, but like as you're writing it,
I listen to it before I get.
Now we're going to listen to Jillian's greatest hits.
That's right. And I just get my little tumbler. And, No, I don't know. What was the question? No,
as you're writing, are you like reading out loud?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, first of all, you got to get your timing right? Like they knew this was going to be a 30-second spot. So anything that I'm writing and you got to make that time mark and neat. So really 30 seconds is more like 25 seconds. And I've got to fill this like 25
make it
seconds.
Count. Yeah.
That's it. You got to make every word count. And so when I knew the people who were going to be involved, like the businesses that were going to be involved, then I kind of knew that I was going to give, each one of them was going to have a line, but they were all going to kind of be similar. And, the whole thank you letter thing just kind of evolved to that. Cause I'm like, what could we have them all say in a similar way, but in also have each one of them do something unique to their business. And you kind of see that throughout the piece. And so once we kind of had figured that and like talked that through, then it was just a matter of like, every word counts. I just sort of like started writing it out. I'm a big believer in like, you write a little bit and you walk away and you do walk away. Like I think some people say like, oh, I walked away. It's like you left the computer for 5 minutes and came back. No, like write it, leave, go do something else, change your brain function, focus on something completely different from the task that you were doing. Because then it is amazing to me sometimes how I will think I've written gold. I'm like, this is the script. I've got it.
The gods have dropped this in my lap.
Exactly. Like, perfect. And then I do my like, okay, I'm going to leave this for like 24 hours and I'm just going to go change my brain, not think about this project, groceries and kids, and worry about all my other things that I have to worry about. And then I'm going to come back to it. And almost always in that situation, I come back to it and I'm like, this is garbage. I have to start over. Or I'll be like, that line is so silly and hokey. I need to change that. Or this doesn't sound it doesn't sound good spoken. Like it might look good on paper, but when you think about like how someone has to read this out loud, like I think they're going to struggle with that. And I actually had that situation on STC, that commercial where the mayor like asked if he could change one of the lines because he like spoken out loud. He couldn't get it. He couldn't like, it didn't roll off the tongue for him. So yeah, that's really like, I would say that's kind of a general process for me is like, you have your bullets, like your kind of, like I said, ideas or things that you have to work within. Usually kick it around whether I was doing it for, doing a script for a different client aside from Matt, because that did happen where I would be like writing a script for someone that wasn't using Matt for whatever reason, or they just needed the script. I always would be like, let's talk about this. Like, let's kick around the idea together. And what do you think? And get those thoughts from him and then come back and be like, okay, let's put it to paper. And then let's do a couple of the exercises of leaving it, walk away, come back, read it. Yeah.
We're currently in that process. Leave it, walk away for a little bit, come back to it.
You're gonna really building up expectations for this ad that we've been writing. I think you've mentioned it.
Have I mentioned
3
it?
Episodes now.
It's going to be brilliant.
I can't wait.
Probably the best thing.
It's the best thing.
No, but I think that
Nothing's ever been greater.
This process you're talking about, though, I think is what differentiates the end result from a lot of the stuff that kind of happens in the corporate video world. I don't know why I would keep talking about corporate video world today, but I guess it's on my mind.
I mean, technically,
we were on
that's
a
kind of
shoot.
like working for a corporate organization that does video.
Yeah.
So,
But it's like you can tell when it was really just a committee, that had to get things approved by their lawyer team.
Exactly.
And all this crap versus someone who's thought about just the soul of connecting to the people.
Right.
And like, what is, the distilled message we're conveying here and how can we say that in a creative way? So that's, stepping away.
I agree.
I'm sure that the lawyers weren't like, what, let me just read through this jargon and step away for, 6 hours, come back to it and see how I can,
Right. How can we make this sound better?
The 3 Ps.
And the
Yes,
finance
I'm sure they were
considered.
not there.
and the vice president or whatever who wanted to put his thumbprint
Oh
on
my
the,
goodness,
thing.
yeah.
Do you do a lot of writing for Woods then?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I very rarely do we farm the scripts out. I shouldn't say farm. That's such a negative connotation for our industry. Very rarely do we find an agency partner to write the scripts. Oftentimes, I write them myself. That's more of the PC way to say that.
Wow, she's good. The corporate world.
It's gotten to me. No, I do a lot of the writing myself. And the reason for that is kind of going back to that, like the emotional center, right? Like Kristen and I are I think her and I see things very similar in this way that like everything we do, we're just very careful about. She and I know and respect and are very passionate about our audience. I think they're some of the best people I've ever met, truthfully. And I mean that. When I get to go to the trade shows, we do like 2 big trade shows a year. One's in Louisville and one's in Ohio. At the Ohio State University. For anyone who went there, I know you have to say it that way, the Ohio State.
He's not a sports watcher.
That's okay.
Oh, baseball. Yeah, you watch baseball. Sorry.
The sport ball.
Go Cubbies.
The Ohio State.
But they love what they do. They are passionate about what they do. They believe in the value of the work that they do. And we found early on, and kind of when we were handing this task of writing certain scripts and pieces off to agencies, we really found, and we trialed a couple that struggled with like kind of unfairly stereotyping, whether they meant to or not, but like kind of writing into a stereotype of our audience. Again, just as for anyone who's just checking in, Woods does agriculture attachments, tractor attachments. So like our farmers and landowners and people who are, I say land caretakers. Like these are people who, Parks and Rec, like they big areas, and they just love what they do and they really feel passionate about it. And I think there's we found this kind of tendency to get into like even like music selection and stuff. People were, it was like,
Just got the banjo in there. And,
yeah. And I'm like, that's not fair. That's not how our whole audience is not listening to that kind of music. I think that's a little bit of a stereotype. And I think there's also a stereotype that of like talking down a little bit too, even to be like, you know, folks out here, yada yada, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
you know, like
exactly. Yeah.
and it's like
That's a big
I've
deal
met
what
these
you're
That's
people.
an out of touch
yeah,
person,
totally.
you
And
know?
and I mean that again, comes back to like what is good writing, what is good storytelling. I think empathy is at the heart of it, and really understanding your audience. Like, who are you writing to? Who are you speaking to? And so, kind of after we went through that process a couple of times, Kristen was like, you know, everything that you've put together, certainly she's an excellent writer as well. And we kind of like, I'll kind of come up with a draft and have like, this is kind of the direction I think I want for this ad or this piece. And here it is. And she'll come back and be like, what if we say it this way? And we work really well together in that regard. But the reason we ended up doing it that way was because we just felt like we weren't finding someone who could like really connect the way that we connect with the level, I should say respect. Like, we just have a deep respect for the customers that we serve, and that comes through, I think, in how we write our advertisements.
I think the word respect is a big deal there.
Yeah.
That you're honing in on.
Yeah.
Because if you, it's got to be very difficult to write for or to shoot in a flattering fashion someone that you don't respect.
Totally.
You know? If you're like in your mind, they're what they do for a living, whatever it is, that's like a second tier operation in your mind or something,
Right.
and you're like writing it with that as a mindset. You're naturally going to have a product that's not portraying them in natural light, or not connecting with them, at least on whatever you're trying to sell them. So.
And I think that we have content. I mean, the number of platforms that we have that our content goes out on now, just generally speaking, it's like, I think you put yourself at a greater risk of people calling you out on that too, right? Like, it's a little bit easier for people to see, you know, maybe years ago when really advertising was regulated kind of like to print and like typical linear television. Like, maybe someone saw it, maybe someone didn't. But now it's like, if you really make that misstep of like misrepresenting your audience, or, you know, however you shoot them and accidentally, whether intentionally or unintentionally or with a lack of care, shot it in a way that kind of portrayed them in a certain way or disrespectful in a certain way, there's a much greater chance that your audience is going to be like, hey, not cool.
I think they can see through the BS too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, not to bring this up again. We just mentioned this in a previous
Why
podcast.
do you look at me when you say BS?
He's checking the temperature to see if you're going to allow this.
What's
Are you going to allow this
that
comment?
was brilliant. That was brilliant. Psychology. She knows it.
Yeah, I can feel it.
Is this my demeanor? Is that what sold it?
Is this okay?
I have no idea what you're going to talk about here. So.
But light. That's a
100%.
classic case of not understanding your
Totally.
audience and making a big mistake. Fortunately, they've been able to turn it around and realize, you know, that's I think customers, I don't know what the outcome has been. I think it's been good, positive so far over the last, I don't know, couple months, whatever it's been. But Shane Gillis is, you know, kind of stepping alongside the brand because he's been such a fan for so long.
An excellent choice, a very strategic choice, very smart. I think they write. I guess wrote that ship.
Road.
I had to.
Like
they righted, like they corrected that ship. Boy, that's like whew.
Like the past form of right. You
Something
don't know.
ridded. No, they figured it out. Let's just say it that way. They figured it out. I think definitely the CEO of the company was like, all right, we got to rethink this a little bit. And
but there's just so many, and you know, some of the questions I had about journalism, and there's so many little ecosystems within different parts of the video production industry, marketing, journalism. It's like they all fit together, but there's little sections that the average person doesn't understand how it works out. You know, so I think it's fascinating to get this insight, not only into journalism but also the research, the market research that you seem very passionate about.
Yeah.
Do you think what was it like when you did get hired on to Woods? This is one of the things that I initially thought of for I wanted to ask you is how do you kind of plan? I don't know if they were already established brand or not, but how did you approach building that brand or elevating that brand or taking a different approach to the whole brand?
Oh boy, I don't know how much I'm allowed to say. Let me think. So,
By the way, Woods, if you're listening, this is a good time to turn it up. No,
yeah, exactly.
Jillian needs a raise for one thing. And
I did good with a question when you have to think about what you can say or not.
No, well, I think it just comes back to like, anytime that you start, Kristen and I were hired right around the same time. So like, there was sort of like a changing of the guard that happened. Right. And you come in and, we were thankful in that we were able to go right ahead immediately. Kristen was able to go right ahead with getting some research done so that we could make informed decisions and how we approach, going forward, whether like our messaging is resonating, do we need to make some changes? And I think that's really where you start anytime you come in, whatever role you're in. If you're in a marketing department, you come into a new brand, a new organization, the first thing you need to do is like get that baseline understanding of like, where do we sit? Like where are we currently in the market and what does that look like? And, can people recall our brand? Can be like, once you understand sort of your starting point, like, are we very well known? Are we hardly known at all? Are we recalled when they show a photo, then they're like, oh, that's Woods. Where are we? And I think that she was very smart in coming in and saying that's truly, if I had been in her shoes, that's exactly what I would have suggested. Is like, we need to get our baseline of where we are in the market and where we are with our customers and where we are with the customers of our competitors. Because I don't think you can really, you're building a house of cards, I think, if you don't have that like solid foundation of understanding where you sit in the market and how people feel about you. And that's like the bare minimum of the work, that foundational work that needs to be done. Yeah. And then once you know that, then it's the fun time. Then it's like, okay, game on. Now we have to get creative and we have to think about, we understand where we sit. We understand how our audience feels about us. We know what's important to them. We know the areas that we can do better. We know areas where we do well, but maybe we don't talk about it enough. And that's something that we found out quite quickly at Woods, was that like, man, we do a lot of really cool stuff and we don't talk about it. And it had kind of been like historically, like kind of like a cultural thing there where it's like, they were like best kept secrets. And I think perhaps maybe there was a feeling of like, you don't want to give away the secret sauce, right? Like we don't want to tell them too much of our competitors, too much of like how we do this or how we engineer this. But, Kristen and I came in and we're like, well, if you're not saying the things that separate you and the things that differentiate you and the things that give the customer an advantage, like to some degree, you have to let the secret sauce out a little bit. I mean, certainly there's things that you need to pull back on for proprietary reasons, or like, there could be a variety of reasons why you might not want to talk specifically about something related to a product. But if it benefits the customer, if it addresses a pain point, if it makes their life easier, if it adds value to the product, like, you got to talk about it. And so it was kind of funny when we started, we joked that like, there was just so much low hanging fruit. We were just like, yeah, all right, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about that. All these amazing systems, all these amazing designs that our engineers in their brilliance had come up with, and things that just far surpassed what the competition puts out there. And I think, again, a product team that's like genuinely committed to making something quality because they respect and are passionate about our audience. So they're not they don't want to feed you. They don't want to send products out that they wouldn't use themselves. And they truly feel that way. I know that's probably like, oh, everyone says that, but like they genuinely feel that way. A lot of our product managers actually own pieces of our equipment. So, and own land.
That's not necessarily common. Yeah, people in the corporate, the top levels actually use the products.
And they do. Quite a few of them do. People who work in the factory, a lot of them own a bit of land, and I know that they use our products as well. And so we all care deeply, and I think it was just really fun to, once we got our baseline understanding, there's so many things here. There's so much here. There's so much potential to just grab onto and just immediately start talking about. And one of the cool things that happened at the trade show this year that she and I were laughing about but just like laughing in an excited way of like, it's working. We have an interesting way that we design our gearboxes. And this is actually a piece that I did recently with Seth at Anomaly Video.
Oh,
He
Seth
does it.
Deming, who we
Seth
have
Dem-
to have on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he needs to be on the podcast. Come on, Seth. This is me challenging you or whatever they do.
Throwing down the gauntlet.
Throwing down the challenge.
I think that was 3 years ago.
I don't know. I don't know what's cool anymore. But he helped with this 3D animation that we did, a piece of our explaining kind of the inner workings of our gearbox. And one of them they were just kind of giving it like a very bland, like it had always just been referred to as like its oil passages. But when Kristen and I dug in, journalism experience, right? Like you're curious, and we dug in a little bit and we kind of understood what these like passages do. It's like a full-blown system that is amazing and keeps the gearbox cool and extends the life of it. And very few other competitors have it. And we were like, this is awesome. So we named it the Cool Flow system because that's the main idea, is that it's continuously keeping the gearbox cool. And so
That
when
sounds cool.
it's so cool. And the video is super cool. And Seth did a wonderful job. And Dan Brown, I should say Dan Brown also worked on, he drove quite a bit of that. So kudos to him. But we were at the trade show and this guy was asking about different products, and one of our salesmen had shown him we had a touch screen that had a lot of content on it, and some of the animation videos were on there explaining what the Cool Flow system is. So he walked over to another product and he said to the salesman, and Kristen overheard him, he goes, "Has this one got the Cool Flow system?" And we quietly were like, yes, like, it's so exciting. Like it's just like a very rewarding feeling of like,
Yeah.
it's
You walk past
working.
that other
It's
booth with your
working.
nose in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's this trade show held?
This is the biggest farm trade show, I think, in the United States, and it happens in February every year. It's the National Farm Machinery Show in Louisville, Kentucky,
Okay.
and it's held at the Kentucky Exposition Center. It's really, really cool, and it's just a lot of fun. And again, it's like because we sell through dealers, like we're a dealer channel manufacturer, we don't get to like talk too much one-on-one with our customers the way some brands do when they're just direct to consumer. So it's really, the trade shows are super fun because you get to really talk to the customers. And let me tell you, again, deep respect for our audience. They will come up and they will tell you good or bad. Usually it's good. I would say like 90% of the time it's
They're
really
honest
good.
people,
Yeah.
right?
And they're
It's-
like, I've had a Woods for, 50 years and it still runs and it was my grandpa's and I love it. And I've only had to do a little, and it's just
That's
like,
great.
they love to share that with you. And then, sometimes they'll tell you like,
and
some-
you're like hitting record on your phone.
exactly.
That's
I get some of
almost-
my best testimonials at the trade shows because
I'm
they
sure.
come up and they're ready to talk. And sometimes they've had like some of the trade shows, it's a little bit of like a little vacation. Like people come from Canada for the National Farm Machinery Show. They'll drive down and they got like, it's a little trip for them. It's a vacation. So they got like they got their beer and they're ready to look at some new, buying
Yeah.
some
It's
new
like us
equipment.
going to Vegas for NAB.
Yeah.
You headed to NAB this year?
Yeah. It is really fun. And
I
are
was
you
just
hitting the
saying-
NAB?
This,
I
this
will-
is probably
I am,
not going to
but-
be
Is it
released
still in
before
Las
then.
Yeah, I was
Vegas?
gonna say, is this going to be
Wait,
released?
Is it still in Vegas or
Yeah.
did,
It
oh,
is
it
in
is.
Vegas,
Okay.
yeah.
I've been there before. Yeah, it's fun.
It is
fun.
cool. You were the way your customers were talking about your machinery. It seems kind of how John Deere kind of has established itself over the years.
Yeah.
It's like a family. I mean, my dad has a tractor that his dad had.
Yeah.
And I think his dad might have bought when he was a little bit older. So
Sure.
it's like 3 generations that have been using it. So it's very interesting that you get people that passionate about
very. Very.
a piece of machinery.
Yeah. Well, and if you think it like the core of it, again, kind of getting to the center of that is like, this is oftentimes generational farming. So, this could be the son who's finally taking over the farm from his dad who took it over from grandpa, and it's their livelihood and they feel super, super passionate about it. So when they find something that helps them do their job well, they're one of the first people to tell you like, this has been a part of our family for years and it's wonderful. And it's great. I love it. And it makes like for super easy content for me selfishly. I'm like,
Yeah.
record.
Yeah. No,
This
that's
is
great.
perfect.
That's great.
We are at the 140 mark.
140.
what does that
well,
mean?
we did talk. That is still pretty long. That's good though. I knew we'd have a good conversation. I want to go back to journalism. No.
Oh my God. I'm tapped out.
No, I was thinking. It just seems like if I were to be put in that role, that would be kind of daunting to take on a full company's marketing. The messaging you're putting out. It seems like it was pretty natural to you.
No.
No?
No. It is daunting. I don't want to we are a 2-man band. 2 should say three. We are a 3-man band, and we rely heavily on our vendor partners, very much so, to be able to do the work that we do. And so it is
for the creation of the content you're talking about?
100%. Yeah. And even well beyond that to things that are just more like internal stuff that we have like a co-op program that has to be run, and we use a vendor for that to like file the claims. I mean, there's just truly one of the things that was, I think, one of the most challenging pieces for me coming into the job was just managing. And it's kind of silly because like I worked as a creative beforehand. And so, Matt and I were that vendor partner, right? Like, but coming into it and having to manage and, be on top of all these different, this person supports our video content. This person supports our, all of our artwork for our brand, from like the catalog to, just like our logo and everything in between. And then over here is something different. And I was kind of like, whoa, but we couldn't function without them. So that was really a learning experience for me. It's like, I shouldn't even say learning experience, but really taking the time and meaningful time to find the partners that we felt passionate about and we felt like really understood. Like I said, there was some growing pains in that, and working with some partners that like maybe didn't fully understand the audience base and like how to speak to them. Like that was part of that growing process of finding the ones we trusted. And
that was going to be my question. Is 2 bonus questions as we wrap up.
Okay.
One, what do you look for in freelancers when you do work with them? Third party, what did you call them?
Vendors,
third party vendors.
Yeah.
What kind of things do you look for? Because obviously we're all freelancers.
Yeah.
A lot of people that watch this are most likely freelancers or do freelance on the side,
So we're going to sit here and try to get your business.
That's okay.
Yeah. No,
I mean, you already did, so.
Yeah.
We are a friend of City Stage.
Because it's like, I guess what things do you look for?
Yeah, I think that there's a natural inclination, perhaps, and I certainly, having been on both sides of it, having been trying to get the business of a client, and now being that client who's has many vendors that they work with, is a very interesting position to be in, because I've really kind of experienced it on both sides. And I think perhaps now in the position that I'm in now, I think maybe I wrongly assumed when Matt and I were working together with Love Creative was, it's all about price. Like it's all about, that's the first thing that this is what they just want to know. Like, how much is it going to be? And and it's hard to get to that like substantive conversation of like, there is value here in working with us. And I think that was just like, again, growing and learning and understanding how you introduce yourself to a client and how you approach it. And so one of the things that I've found, there's a couple of things that I really value. I think first, if you're approaching a business or a corporation or a large business of any kind of understanding a little bit, very loosely, about like, how does their marketing operation work? So in my experience, it's Chris and myself and Cheryl.
And good amount of shout outs to you.
Go. Yeah. And so it's really, it's like a 3-lady operation, and we have a lot to do. A lot. So I think my mic just went out. No, it's back. So it's important for us that we find someone that can really, like, we feel like this agency or this freelancer is going to alleviate some of our work from us, truly alleviate it, not require like constant back and forth, not require heavy monitoring, hand holding, right? Like, this person really knows their craft, and they know what we need them to do, and they can execute with a little bit of direction. So that's probably the first and most important thing, is it saves me time. Like, I put so much value on that, and I know that she does as well. I think the second thing is not being able to, if I hire you, it's because I know that you are the expert in this area. I know that you're good at what you do, and I've seen your work, and I feel confident in what your abilities are. So as the expert, I need you to be able to not be afraid to tell me if you think, like we were talking about before, like, your idea isn't great. Let's go in another direction. And certainly there's a nuance to that, right? Like you're not going to say that idea sucks. But you would approach it as like, you know what, I hear that and I understand what we need to achieve here. And, you know, having this conversation is really good because one of the things that's making me think about is what if we looked at it this way? And then giving that expertise and that approach of like, again, that makes me trust you even more, that you're willing to say, I'm bringing an idea to the table here. I'm bringing a solution to the table here versus like, you know, we've had vendors in the past where it's like pulling teeth. You feel like you're doing all the work. You're having to bring all the ideas. You're having to write
what are we paying you for?
Exactly. What are we paying you for? So I think that's another big one is don't question your value. If you've made it to the table and you're having this discussion, do not be afraid to take ownership of yourself as an expert and be able to, you know, have that meaningful conversation that makes the client trust you even more. And then lastly is price. No, it's really not. It's truly not. And I think if there was advice that I could give, it's, you know, it's just, if you're coming to the table with quality and you're very good at what you do and you've proven it out and you've shown what you're capable of. I think sometimes there is a tendency in the creative industry to lean on this, like, oh, if I had just bid a little less, or if I had just come with this quote, you know, one of the things that I do recommend of our vendors is like, give me options. Like, again, come with solutions. So option A is like the steak and lobster package. And you get this, and this, and this is what it's going to cost. Or we can look at option B and like, give me oftentimes that is the most helpful to me because then I can take that to my stakeholders and be like, look, I really feel strongly about option A because I think this is the goal that we're trying to achieve. And then we can have that conversation of like, I like option A too, but I think we're going to have to go with option B. But if you come at me with just option A and that's it, and you're not willing to like give me some solutions to work with, then it makes my job harder as the person who, again, has to go to the stakeholders and try to convince them of why they need to pull the trigger on this.
And saves an extra step for you too.
Exactly. Yeah.
That makes sense. No, great. Yeah, that's one of the questions I was like, oh, that's a perfect question to ask. It came on the spot. Last question. So you and Matt have young kids.
We do.
What ages?
9 and 4 and a half. Oh, you would be mad if I didn't say and a half. 4 and a half.
So how do you guys both, because Matt freelances, he has his own business, right?
Yeah.
You travel.
A little bit,
How do you... Yeah, not as much.
Not as much as I used to, yeah.
How do you balance this, having a family, having 2 kids?
I don't know.
Day by day?
It's day by day. No, I think it's, you know, I think you just... We're like giving marriage advice. This is kind of awkward, but I think
we're thinking about
I need all of it.
Changing this into a psychological marriage.
Pre-marriage.
This is marriage counseling. No, I think I have a ton of respect I've always had a ton of respect for like who he is as a person, obviously, but like the work that he does. And I think like he's incredibly talented. And I know that he feels the same way about me and the work that I do. And so when you feel that way about each other, you want to support each other because you see that this person is, you know, has a gift in this area and they feel passionate about it and they enjoy what they do. So then it's like, I want to continue to support you in this, and how do we work together to make that happen? And certainly there's days when it's absolute sheer chaos madness. Actually today, oddly enough, he texted me, like I was driving, it's pouring rain. He texted me and to tell me that we're pretty sure our daughter has strep throat.
Oh no.
So now, you know, we had all planned on me being on the podcast today, and he was like, you know, it's all good. Don't turn around. I'll take the day off. We'll get it figured out. Don't worry about it. You know, like I think his last text was like, I've got it. And that's kind of how we support you. It's like just understanding like there's going to be days when it's easier for him, not as easy for me. And you just work together, communicate, and try to balance it because I think it's important, the work that he does. And he feels that way about the work that I do. And it's definitely part of what makes us who we are. So you want to support that in your spouse as much as you can, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Imagine.
I agree. Mutual respect. It's a big deal.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
This
I
was
love it.
so fun. And I'm surprised I didn't even like hardly get to ask you guys questions. So I'll have to come back
Yeah.
and
It's just a drill
interrogate.
down.
With two dudes talking over you, asking questions. This is enough.
Not at all. This is so fun. Well, I would love to do this again.
I
This
mean,
is a blast.
I have a lot more questions.
Yeah, I mean, we
There's-
like 75% journalism.
Yeah, there's more.
So next time.
Yeah, next time. Would love to have you back.
I
And
would
you know,
love
there's
to.
there's obviously a lot more we can dive into the minutia of marketing as
Yeah.
well, and the research and all that.
There's plenty there.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate your time. It's been a fun conversation, guys. This is
The first
Jillian
husband and
Love.
wife, you know.
First
duo
husband wife
we've had.
combo on the
Love and wife
podcast.
combo.
Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for more great conversations coming soon. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Das Vidania.
Das vidania.